here we are. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that she comes back. Did she say she was going to come back, or?
So I think she dropped off because she was having technical issues. So I think she's coming back.
Okay. Well, she'll see us on there. Anyway, hello everyone. My name's Tara, and this is I've decided to reboot my morbid podcast, my morbid symptoms podcast that I started when actually after October 7th. It was kind of my push to, I don't know, to do a podcast because I just thought, have to share all my grievances and insights, etc. Anyway, I'm here with Laura Jones, and we decided there's a group of us on X, basically that we say a bit turfy and against genocide, which means basically in my mind that we're people who know that men can't really be women and that genocide is bad. So that's basically the two characteristics of the people who are in our group. And so we just decided. Go ahead.
Who knew those two positions were in opposition somehow?
Yeah, no, that's the thing, is that there's quite a few of us, and we'll see if people can join. But basically, there's just well, I don't know how small of a group we are, but what I found was this: that immediately after October 7th, people who seemed quite reasonable and logical and evidence-based and whatnot on the gender issue just started parroting straight IDF propaganda, just like swallowed and regurgitated the Hasbro whole. And I was just like, what is happening here? And heard some of the most racist things. I was just like, whoa. And it was just like, and then you're kind of like, oh, good, she's back. Hello. We're live. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. So Laura and I were just talking about how, the kind of how us three came, how us, our noble band came to be together. And I was just talking about how shocking it was from October 7th on, how many people who I used to respect and follow, and it was really discombobulating. I was trying to be like, how can someone who's so on it on this issue and other issues just sound no different from Bibi Netanyahu, and just broke no question or no debate. It was just like, what's happening? Anyway, Laura, do you want to say something?
Yeah, if you'd have told me 8 months ago, right, that say if you wanted to say Posey Parker is going to shift way rightwards and she's going to start saying some really racist stuff on Twitter, I would have been like, oh, okay, that's believable, that's a pity. I would not have believed it of Graham Linehan, of Julie Bendel, of like just so many commentators that I'm like, where the hell did this come from? Because these are people who were against the Iraq War, against the invasion of Afghanistan, who had a sense of like the kind of anti-Muslim sort of racism that we all went through, back then. Mm-hmm. I don't know how. I mean, we were all worried about this pipeline to the right. There were various feminists who raised the issue, years ago. I didn't realize how effective it had been, and it does just seem like if you disagree with the woke crowd on one thing, and you're going to disagree with them on everything, and they just seem to have just assumed that position. But the thing is, in my experience, because I've tried to cling on to the left despite being cancelled and ostracized and all the rest of it, I've continued to do activism. And what I've found is the anti-racism and the anti-war protesters and the trans rights activists are not the same people. There's some crossover, but largely they're different groups of people with different specific interests that they're into. It's not one big movement that are just parroting anything for, what is it they keep saying? That's it, virtue signaling. We have a problem with children's anger, virtue signaling.
No, there was someone, I can't remember who it was. It was one of the gay men who was quite the JC's gender critical, and he's a lawyer or something, and probably
Kavanaugh has been
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
no,
And he said, and like on the October 10th, he's like, Palestinian is the new gender. And Wesley Yang was like, no matter what post someone would post, he was just posting this atrocity porn, some video of some woman being dragged, and he would just, no matter what you were saying, he would put that on there. And he'd just be like, nope, it's not a concentration camp. No, it's not this. No, the idea, or the Israel uh, left Gaza in 2004. I mean, just on down the line. And you're like, and you can even show, like, I was even going out of my way to find Israelis or Jewish commentators, not just like, lawyers, researchers, to be like, look, they say it. It's not, you don't have to take my word for it. They say it. And it just did not matter. Well, I don't tell you, you're a Hamas lover, you're, all this shit. And I was like, and oh my God. And there was a couple of women who were like, oh yeah, it's easy to talk now, but if you were, if you were there for like an hour, then you change your mind and blah, blah, blah. And, you don't know how those animals are. And I was like, and then I finally I couldn't believe it, because I actually lived in Gaza for 2 years, 2002 to 2004, in between college and grad school. It's a long story, but anyway, and I felt like I literally put this post on there with a picture of me from there saying, I lived in Gaza for 2 years. These are the things that never happened to me. I was never sexually assaulted. I was never raped. I was never attacked for being American. I would, on down the line. So just saying, and it's not like I didn't stand out, but it was just so ridiculous to me. Like, oh, well, just the most, like, it was just basically like we would say with woke bros, or the under the premise of trans rights, the kind of carte blanche that people have to say all kinds of things to women. It was the same thing with this. Now that we can say anything we want about Muslims, about women who are saying all this stuff, or the people would be like, well, they're anti-gay. I go, what? So we should kill them all? Anybody who doesn't have a month-long LGBT pride parade and like a kink walk, we're just gonna, bomb them out of existence. It was the most crazy. And I kept on, and I was just thinking, this is like dealing with TRAs. Worse almost, because these are people who you thought just before were intelligent, rational, we all have our blind spots. I'm sure that there's things that people look at me and be like, how can you be so, off the wall here? But I was just like, what is happening? And thank God there was a couple of people, some of which are in the XDM group, Terfs but not genocidal, that you started to commiserate. And you're like, good, I'm not the only one who's seeing this. Because it was, what was it? Julie Perry, who was talking about, like, making the, when she was critical of the sexual revolution with the porn thing and stuff. Total Zionist, apparently. Julie Bindel. What's the lady there's the other Julie something who's in The Spectator, who wrote about trans maids and whatnot. Huge, like, total Zionist. Mary Harrington, and it was also like with Spiked and with Spectator. I used to watch, because they were quite good on the gender stuff, and also some of the more, excesses of quote unquote woke. All of them were just like full on get them.
I know.
And I'm like, what?
And I feel bad, like I can't have a little pity party here, obviously, because it's not about us or what we're going through.
No.
But I mean, it is just mind blowing, and it's a pity, because I spent 2 years having been kind of very isolated from former, comrades and people I'd worked with, watching the mess we're in, commiserating and kind of feeling like, this is keeping me sane a little bit. Oh, cheers. And then, kind of I had this dream, like I think every gender critical, or I don't even know really whether I should go by that, but feminist or whatever, people that are against this, gender identity ideology. I kind of had a little bit of a dream that, because we'd gone through a bunch of stuff in these groups that I've been in on the left in Scotland, that maybe I would get to have like write a little thing for Glenn, or like go on the show or whatever. Maybe J.K. Rowling will retweet something that I write about homelessness or something someday. And I finally got an interaction from J.K. Rowling the other day.
Oh,
And
there
what's
you
it for? No, well, no, it's because
go. Oh,
I put out. That's it. I put out a tweet saying, "Where are all the GC commentators who spent years talking about how terrible it is that children are being mutilated? And there's tens of thousands of children being mutilated on your screens every day, and you're not saying any. Well, not only are you not saying anything, you're saying it's perfectly right and justified." And then J.K. Rowling comes on to like that Shropshire Wendy's comment saying, "Actually, Laura, I think you find just because someone agrees with you about one thing doesn't mean they're necessarily going to agree with you about another thing." Do you know what I mean?
Thanks. Let me write that down. Well, yeah, of course, certain things that are just like, you know, it's just, there's certain things that are hard to get over. You know, I have family members. My accent probably gives me away that I'm in the UK, but I'm not of the UK. I grew up in the United States on the West Coast, and I have a lot of family members who are America, love it or leave it. You know, MAGA, all this stuff. I can deal with all that because Biden is like the other half of that ass cheek. Yeah, so I'm just like whatever. But even those people, I'm sorry, you know, they are not as gung ho as some of these quote unquote liberal or rad liberal feminists that for some reason, since they have this idea, or, you know, they have like, you know, so Muslim culture is really misogynist, patriarchal, whatever. So I guess that for some reason it's all okay then. I mean, it's like a case study in the manufacturing of consent in terms of the sorting of worthy and unworthy victims. I mean, in the language, in the whatever, and just the rationale. Well, that's Hamas's fault. That's Human Shields. It's like, what are you talking about? If you would just think about that for a minute, it is so ridiculous. And for me, it's like, okay, if you want to judge, fine. You can judge all you want, but let's use the same measure. Let's use the same measure that we're critiquing Hamas with and other Palestinian resistance groups that we critique the other side with, keeping in mind the actual history and context of this issue. Fine. You know, that's fine. But no, I mean, it's like two different measures in two different planets. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And the fact that a lot of people only care about women's rights or women's issues when there's another political point to be scored, and that's actually a huge insult to feminists, and it's not something that we should be, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, if you want to use it as a racist argument, you want to use it as an argument for genocide, I mean, it just feels like the feminists have uniformly, well, not uniformly, obviously, like that's kind of the message we're being given, and I suppose we really shouldn't fall into that ourselves because it's clearly not the case. But a lot of them seem to have decided that Muslim men are just the worst sexists. In terms of all the sexist men in the world, the Muslims are the worst, and
the
that
women
means
are totally complicit. And it's just I mean, it's just to me, and I said this to one person, and I thought they were gonna, like, you know, if they could, they would go through the X screen and like kill me on the spot. I said, I can guarantee you that I was safer walking around Gaza at night than I would be walking around any pub, any party area, in any Western city. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, yeah, but you would have to wear this. You wouldn't even have to be there. I go, what are you talking about? Not every place is the most repressive aspect you've seen. And yeah, is there repression? Yes. What do I have from the outside looking in? Do I have what are you know, are the sex dynamics what I would like? Whatever. It's not my place. And if you're in solidarity, you're like, listen, ladies and women or whoever over there, what's going on with you? You know, and most of the things, if you talk to people, it's always the same. It's like, it's economic, it's material. If you have more economic material security, the other stuff tend to follow. I mean, not like a domino, but it's just easier. And it's the idea that some Western feminists have that these women are trapped and hate their culture. Of course, and it's not just one homogenous thing. It's like, it's so condescending. They don't need you to fucking save them. But what they do need is to say, mass bombing is bad. Collective punishment is bad. This histrionic whitewashing of history is bad. You know, this idea that somehow we're only okay if we're victims. As soon as some of us fight back, all of a sudden, you know, they can't take it because it might tarnish them. They might do something bad. you know.
And yeah,
It's like,
you would
please.
think that it would start at the bottom. At the very bottom, it starts with the right to life, the right to bodily integrity. Do you know what I mean? And it builds from there. I don't understand how you can be in favor of all the women's rights, except the one that says people can't kill you indiscriminately. I mean, that's insane. That's the number one. Let's sort that one out before we worry about the others. But see what you're saying about this kind of idea about Muslims. I was a bit guilty of that myself. So you said you spent some time in Holland or in the Netherlands. I grew up in Belgium. So I grew up in Brussels. Yeah, so we've got like a immigrant population. I love Brussels. I absolutely love it. And I love how diverse it is, obviously. But
that's funny.
Yeah.
Christmas time. The Leffe and the stuff with the cherry flavored beer that I drink too much of. Sorry.
Oh, I love it.
I can't believe we're the only two people here, Laura, but I love you already, and I'm glad you're here with me.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you. Yes, no, I'm so glad I've met you.
11 people watching us on YouTube. I don't know who's watching. There might be other people, love watching or hate watching us on.
I feel like I should share this, but I'm not sure how. But I'll just say what I was going to say. That like there was a lot of, so growing up in Brussels, big immigrant communities, lots of different communities, some of them like better integrated, and, I'm not going to go into all what that means than others. And what I found was there's a lot of young North African immigrant men who are marginalized in society, who they're not even let into some clubs and pubs and stuff. There's a lot of racism, they face brutality from the police. A lot of the time the police seem to like look for any excuse to arrest these people. The prisons are full of young Moroccan and Algerian men. But as a teenager, a minority of those young men would take out their frustrations through kind of street harassment of teenage girls. And I had a lot of that growing. And the message that I had kind of assimilated from that was, oh, well, obviously young Muslim men aren't taught to respect women. When I went to Egypt, and I've now spent quite a lot of time in Egypt, I was so shocked that it's not like that at all. You don't walk around, men aren't grabbing you and staring at you and stuff like that. That doesn't happen. In fact, it's far less likely to happen because it's hugely frowned on there. Like, yeah, it's a sexist society. We live in a sexist society. There are different kinds of sexist society. And one thing about Egypt is it's a highly paternalistic society. The men don't really want to let you travel a long distance alone, They want to make sure there's like a sort of responsibility on the part of like all the men in a community to keep the women safe. And you can say that that's, obviously hugely patronizing and that the women are controlled in different ways and social things and all the rest of it. But all I'm saying is that there's two sides to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like, four sides. But I would say, I think it's always, again, my thinking about this has changed, and it might change tomorrow. But I try not to romanticize people or to demonize them. So if somebody's acting poorly, they're acting poorly. There could be reasons and rationales and all kinds of things. There's the act, and then there's the reason what you do for it and whatnot. So do Muslim boys and men act, it's just like, there's all kinds of stuff. Is it more permitted in some places than others? And for me, I have to tell you, just to be honest, is I had the exact opposite experience in Egypt.
Oh, no. Oh, dear. Okay.
But no, this is just anecdotal, because when I was in Gaza for 2 years, I worked at an American International School there, and there was about 4 or 5 of us single women, Canadian American. I think there was one from New Zealand or whatever, and we would go. We could walk around. It was fine. We wore conservative clothes. We weren't expected to cover, and we didn't cover. But I'd wear long skirts, or you wouldn't wear like a tank top and shorts and whatnot out walking on the street. And we would get, people would look at us, we'd get attention. But everybody knew who we were, and the word was out. You respect them. They're our guests. You treat them right. And if anybody didn't, they'd be in trouble, because we're here. We're teaching at the school. It's a difficult situation. Blah blah blah. So really not very, but of course, you're also I was more cognizant of my reputation there than in other places. You can just imagine if there's 4 single women there, and that's really unusual there for you to be single and to live on your own. Even we're in an apartment building with, other people, some of the other teachers who are men and who are also single, but they would, but whatever. And a group of us, three of us went to Egypt on break because when we were there, we had Christian holidays and Muslim holidays. We had all the holidays, so many holidays. And there was three of us. This is we're in our 20s at this point. And it was just constant low-grade harassment in the form of, because if you see somebody and you catch eye, if someone says hello to you, you want to say hello back. And as soon as we did that, we would just always get like a trail of a couple of guys who would not want to leave us alone. Now they weren't like, trying to attack us or anything. But like, oh, smile, smile at me. Oh, let's have a coffee. Let's have a tea. Let me, and we'll show. And like, no, it's okay, please. But there was some, so this was just constant. And it's also because at that time, what they saw from American and Western women, they saw, MTV, they saw Baywatch. So it was this idea that somehow things were just, on the menu. Maybe that, you know what I mean? And my colleagues who went there with men, with their partners, didn't have any issues. And I have to say, it was kind of, by the end of this 10 days, I was like, okay, I love Egypt, but guys between like 14 and 40, I'm just like, whatever. And I knew that was, I was generalizing, but it was based on the experience. It was so funny because we came back from Dahab, so we were on this bus for like 12 hours, and with the window down and the sand and all this stuff. And it was like an overnight bus, and we got off at the bus station. We had to walk like, I don't know, like a kilometer or maybe half to our hotel, and we were going to fly off in the morning. And we were just looking like crap. And someone comes up from behind me and like grabs my butt. And immediately I'm like, haram, haram. Allah is watching. We all just like going after this guy. And people would, So it was just kind of low grade, I have to say. It wasn't like we ever felt like we were in danger, but it was just like, no, we don't want you to stay with us. And then you feel kind of like, I don't want eye contact, because as soon as you do that and say hello, then it's like, oh, well, I'm going to, and it could be, I don't know what their intentions were, but it was also like, once you say hello, it's like, no, thank you, then you should leave us be. Yeah. So I guess it's not like it was hardcore, but I just remember thinking like, my God, this was just, but the thing is that, I mean, I'm not going to make it, I think it's also, I don't like when it gets really patronizing. Well, their culture and they don't know any better, this type of thing. It's like, well, there's different norms, different expectations, but we're all humans and we have the capacity to be like, okay, this is the situation that I'm in, or whatever. Yeah. But also, I think it's hard to keep it all in mind. But this idea that somehow there's an essentialness to like, well, they X is like this no matter what. They're like, well, that's stupid. I also did X and Y, and now I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, well, one conclusion that I've reached is that the only thing every culture and every country has in common is that there are people within that country who are trying to make a better life, who are trying to improve the future of that place. And that goes for Egypt. There's loads of like students and women and like, so that's the thing, we forget them, these Western feminists are like condemning every Muslim, that you forget about all the Muslim women in these countries that are working to improve the status of women. And there's a lot of them, and they're the ones that need our support. The first time I went to Egypt was for this thing called the Cairo Conference back in it was 2011, so it was like just after or kind of during the revolution. And we all went as part of this socialist group from Glasgow to hear all these different kind of socialist and anti-imperialist groups from like all over, the region. And like it was obviously, it was really inspiring and stuff. And there was like all this chaos happening. But me and this other girl that went, our intention had been to speak to Egyptian women about the revolution and their role within the revolution and their hopes for the future. And unfortunately, we only really spoke to one Egyptian woman, and we didn't get that much out of her. And we came back and we were like, well, we don't really feel like we're in a position to write this piece because we didn't really get that perspective. We got a lot of different interesting stuff. So two of the men in the group decided to take it on themselves to do their write-up of feminism in the Egyptian revolution. And it was this whole like, oh, you Westerners are trembling at the sight of these mighty women in hijabs leading the demonstrations and the protests in Tahrir Square. And we're going, I'm sorry, what? Have you seen the footage? There's no women in that footage. And the ones that were, unfortunately, did not have a very good time in Tahrir Square, and there was no mention made of that. So,
No.
like, there's some stuff like that that led me to, in the end, I mean, mainly it was like actual ignoring of sexual abuse within the social circles, which often, unfortunately, goes on with these unregulated sort of little groups,
Yeah.
that kind of made me leave. But a lot of that stuff really did bug me. A lot of people as well, if you got Iranian feminist commentators, they'd be like, oh, well, isn't that convenient, having a go at Iran, oh, let's all have a go at Iran kind of thing. And you'd be like, well, she's Iranian. She lives there. Is she not allowed to? Oh, she's educated. That's like one reason you can't listen to women is because they're educated. And that means that they're, middle class and thus
Yeah,
basically
which
a
is
Western.
also, it's really difficult because not all of us are, obviously there's obviously you're a woman, I'm a woman. Women have obviously we're adult human females, so we have that in common, and a variety of other that type of thing. But yeah, it's just that and I also spent quite a bit of time in China and Korea and India, and
Wow.
and well, it sounds more anyway. That's another story from the time. But why I brought that up is because there's no one woman or group of women who can say I can speak for women, let alone of a whole city for a whole country. Yeah, there's some similarities. Obviously, we should have some solidarity, but it doesn't mean we can't question or whatever. And so I'm just bringing this up because a lot of the women feminists who I knew in India were upper class, were Brahmin, were highly educated, and when you're talking to them, when you're at a conference or this type of thing, it's one thing. But then when you're doing field work, all of a sudden the caste thing becomes quite pronounced. And I'll just use one example. I was at a friend's house, a friend's house. Yeah, she's a friend. And she would scold me like, you shouldn't thank the servants. It confuses them. It's like, you don't need to smile. You just like pretend like they're not there. That's what they're used to. And I'm all like, okay. And what am I going to do? Like stand up in the living room and be like, come with me, darling ladies. You have nothing to lose but your chains. And let's go. And then I go off and I like just leave. And I'm like feeling really good about myself. I'm just like, all right. And I also have experience for my master's degree. I don't want this. I'm sorry. I'm like talking about myself. But what I did when I was in Mumbai, and basically there was this new rule that had been a new constitutional amendment that mandated reservation. So 30% of the local councillor politicians had to be women. I think of those also had to be 30% to be reserved from backward castes. And so I wanted to go and see, okay, well, who are these ladies? What difference does it make? Because the idea that if you have 33%, at least 33% women, they had all these like great ideas about what that was going to mean because women are so essentially good and non-corrupt and all this stuff. And maybe some of us are, some of us aren't. And what I found is that the men I was talking to about it were way more, at least what they were telling me, way more what I would call kind of modern and Western, their ideas about sexual, the relations between the sexes, than these women would tell me. And I really did not want to put words in anybody's mouth. Yeah, I just wanted to hang out, just talk to, just to get an idea of what was it like for this first batch or second batch of these women counselors when there was like 33% of them. And also if they had any kind of grouping together, or if it was very much party-based. And of course it was very much party-based. So there wasn't a lot of, so all these fantastic things that probably people that look like you and I thought would happen if you had this law, really weren't happening. These weren't happening organically. Not that doesn't mean it's a bad, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing that's in place, but it's just this, this kind of angel in the morning that, the women, we let women in politics and it's going to clean everything up. And, this really, and somehow they're going to be able to, like they're going to leave the culture and the one life at the door when they go into the municipal building or the legislative room or something. And it was just, you're just like, okay. But it's the same thing. I mean, I can think about my mom back in the States. I mean, my parents' relationship was very conservative. I mean, very, you know, and so it was like, you know, she, when I went through my feminist phase, she was just like, yeah. And she'd be worried, like, who, you know, how are you going to get a husband if you're talking like this? It's like, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'll never have one. So no one was more surprised than my mother when I got married. But anyway, so yeah, so I don't, yeah, I think that, and to get back on topic, with the how what I'm calling Zionist rights activists with the trans right activists, is that even now, Laura, after everything we've seen, still some of them have gotten more quiet, I've noticed, but still no, even the people like, you know, maybe this has gone too far, you know. I don't know if it's in for a penny, in for a pound, or what the deal is, but to me, it's like, I mean, I think I have to believe that even if I didn't live there, hadn't lived there for a while, it's just any place. It's like, I don't have to share some group's worldview or agree with them on how, you know, see things that way to be like, it's not good for this shit to be happening. And especially because I come from the States, my government is, you know, the daddy to all this, and or the mom and the dad. And of course, where we're at now, the UK's official policy isn't any better. And it's just like, I want to pull my hair out. It's like, how? And you're getting to people who still will tell you, they get mad, they want to police your words. Oh, it's not really a genocide, or it's not really this, or and this is stupid thing. You big look, we could, what, and again, when I come back before, it's like, okay, if we, I'm totally fine to have a conversation with you about this, but what's our measure here? You know, what's the definition? Should we use the ICJ, like the international law definition? Should we use the people, the various organizations? Like, what definition or what thing do you want to use? And then we can look at it. Because if you look at what's going on and you look at what they're saying and what they're doing, how can you, unless you really are such a motivated liar or such an unmitigated racist, or such a believer that even though it's really bloody, that somehow, you know, Jesus is going to come again. I don't know what the deal is. How can you not just objectively say, yeah, this is not good. This is a war crime, you know? And I'm like, how? And I think that I'm not coming up with this. I can go with this and be like, okay, here are the rules of war, and every single one of them they break. And they've been breaking them for a very long time. And now it's up the ante. This is their freaking final solution. And they're telling you, and you will not acknowledge it. It's a total gaslight. And I want to be like,
do you not remember
this? But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Do you remember the anti-Semitism accusation being leveled at Terfs over and over again? Remember, they kept trying to be like, oh, you shared a thing from this group, and they shared a thing from this group, and they said a thing that was bad about whatever, and then, you know, they've just gone through all this, and yet here they are doing the same thing, and you're like, no, I'm not an anti-Semite. No, I don't care. I've labeled you one. It doesn't matter. And then no debate. Absolutely, there must be no debate, and the refusal to like actually inform themselves. It's like it has become socially vital to these people to hold this belief. They have fallen into the exact same trap that these middle-class wankers, have over the last 10 years have been like, I am not going to investigate this issue because I'm scared that the facts will contradict with this view, and it's very important that I hold this view in order to be accepted by the social pile. So it's literally just replaced the poor trans children with the poor Jews that are being facing this huge, unprecedented wave of anti-Semitism. Are they kidding? What are they talking about? They're like Christmas all over again. Like how? Like where?
It's like, it's like every false flag thing.
I'm not pretend. Sorry. Just to put a caveat in there. Obviously, there are some people that do hate Jewish people, and that's not okay. But dear God, like, are they kidding? They've had that exact same accusation leveled at them, and 10 years of being told that they hate trans people, that they hate men, that they hate gender non-conforming children, gay people, etc. How can they not see? But I think they can. I think you're right. I think it's this cognitive dissonance that is required
Also,
now.
I think also,
Little
Laura,
bubble that
I think also that some people are just bad at this. I mean, some people really don't give a shit.
yeah,
You know, and if you go back, and I don't know why we should be surprised at this. I think this is like, you know, I mean, I don't want to quote Mary Harrington because she, you know, could care less about, you know, it seems like there's no number of massacred children would cause her to revisit her her take on this. But this thing about how I don't believe in progress, it's like I think we also want to think. And again, it's a good thing to be like, well, there must be some reason, like they just don't know, or there's this cognitive dissonance, or they can't with themselves, you know. And that could all very much be the case with some people, but I think there's some that it's, you know, especially when it's the Zionist project. From the beginning, they knew what they were doing, and they said as such. It became later, and I don't know if it's with media and whatnot, that he had this kind of, you know, this disguise and all this obfuscation and all this other stuff. But if you go back to what the original from you know, what was it, 1897, to the first people that started, you know, with the migration or the settlement, and then they knew what they were doing. They were like, yeah, these people are going to fight back. They knew they were colonizers. They said as such. It was like, no, this is our project, and you know, you got to get the devil their due. They, you know, they it worked out quite well, except for, of course, you know, they all, you know, just objectively for them. And this is the thing is that, and I mentioned this before, that I try to be like, I can show you, like, this is what these people are saying. This is what these people are doing. I'm not saying it. And it just does not matter. Hamas is bad. They're misogynist. They're homophobic. And I'm just like, dude, how many LGBT Palestinians do you think have been? Who's killed the most LGBT Palestinians? Who's oppressed the most LGBT Palestinians? Who's freaking blackmailed the most LGBT Palestinians? It's not Hamas.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they're, you know, that it's easy to be a gay person in there. Although I have to say that again in 2004, which was, you know, it was before the draconian blockade. One of the things I did in Gaza was probably twice a week I went to a hair salon because, you know, it's so cheap there, and I want to support the economy. It was something to do. And two of the gayest men I've ever seen in my life were working at that salon. Now, did they ever say they were gay? Did anybody ever say they were gay? But those two people were gay. Gay as the day is long. Gay, gay, gay. You know, and I don't know, it could have gotten worse. I don't know if it's like some sort of, you know, kind of like don't ask, don't tell type of thing. People just pretend like it's not, you know. And it's just, you really think that people are being like, there was this mass persecution of, you know, yeah. I'm not saying that there wasn't, I'm not saying that it's not difficult. And you totally, I'm sure you have to really be in the closet and navigate that.
But it was,
go ahead.
It was difficult. It was difficult in Ireland, say, you know, up until what, 30, 40 years ago. But it was still like two very famous Irish celebrity guys that worked for the theatre, and everyone knew they were a couple, and everyone had a great fondness for them. They were like national kind of figures and stuff. And like, it's like that thing where, you know, gay people have always existed. There's always been, not, I'm going to say a level of secret acceptance, but there's always been that kind of wink and a nod and, oh, you know, your aunt and that kind, you know, it's not like people are going to be uniformly hateful of something just because it's considered like, you know, against the social order or whatever.
It really came out that was obvious, and I wouldn't be surprised at all, and I'm sure that you know, the family or the group does something, which is, Israelis know that, and with all this surveillance, anyone who's looking at anything that they could use on them to get in trouble, they will use it. They will, if they can get a woman or a young girl, or I don't know, it could be young girl, but like a young woman, I don't know, early teenager, if they can get her in a compromising position at a checkpoint, or when they detain them for some reason, they will use that to get information from them. This happens all the freaking time. But also the thing is like people are like, well, have you seen that? I'm like, just use your brain. What do you think this is like? These people have no political and civil rights. The Israelis can do anything to them that you want. And you think in that situation that the women and the girls are treated nicely? Are you out of your mind? I mean, please, it's nothing to do with being Jewish or Zionist. That would be the case anywhere. You know, if even where you have women have civil and political rights that are on the books and mostly enforced, you have issues. But if you have a place where these people have no protection under the law at all, please spare me this Hamas rapes. I'm just like, I'm like, now I don't know what happened that day. And also it wasn't just Hamas fighters that got out, because when they broke through the barricades or whatever, there's other people that came out. Who knows? I have no idea. But what I can say with absolute certainty, that rape is not a tactic of Hamas. They were like, go forth and rape, boys. Which doesn't mean that nothing bad will happen. I don't know. I can't prove a negative. All I know is that so far everything that's come out has been very unsubstantiated.
Yeah, you'd think there would be something.
No reason to, yeah, but I'm just like, come on. But again, it's this double. It's this two different spoons. It's like, if you want to judge, fine, but let's judge with the same. And even that's difficult because of the situation is so different. It's just like, what do you think it's like for a people if you're under this condition for 10, 20, 30, 40, all these years? You think it allows for a lot of, woo, I don't know. But it's just like, oh, you're just making, I'm going, not. It's like, please. But it's just this, just this thing, like, and it's kind of funny. Sometimes if someone's really just a dick and comes in hot, you got to bat them around like a mouse, like you're a cat, And it's like, well, really, Hamas knows that a man's not a woman and a woman's not a man. They're not down with the TQITS, whatever. So you got something in common there. Family values, or whatever. I mean, of course, that's more on the conservative side. But what's amazing is, and this always, and I hate having to be so paranoid, is that again, I'm finding myself in these weird situations, and so you find there's a lot of people who are also really, really speaking out a lot against Israel. But sometimes, if you look between the hood, you're also like, I don't know how much this is about, freedom and fair treatment for Palestinians, and how much of it's just a pretext to say all the stuff they want to say about, globalists and how the Jews run everything and all this kind of. It's very much like, I'm like, dude, I'm not going to go there. But but you find that, like, because it's like I found more common ground. There's our group. We have this overlap, and not everybody's as left as we are, probably. But you have this kind of, you can communicate. You have like this. There's this configuration of facts and law and whatever that we all agree to. Now we can have various interpretations or what we think might happen or whatever, but it's not like, a Martian talking to a Venetian or something. It's just. And so you find a lot of some of the more conservative people finding common ground with the conservative values they attribute to Muslim society, which of course is not everybody, but over there more so than not, I'd imagine. But I'm always very leery, like, when someone starts to go too, they start saying stuff like, yeah, it's just the same thing. The communists and the Bolsheviks and the Zionists, they're all the same thing. I'm like, oh, calm down, brother. Calm down. I'm like, oh, okay. This isn't really about, equal rights under, like international law and just basic morality, and standing up and saying, no, 2 + 2 isn't 5. Women don't have penises. War crimes are bad. There's no chosen people. But I'm not getting into all the who knows what that again has been.
I feel like that stuff is losing its grip on the like youth of the left or whatever you want to call them. There was one thing that's always baffled me about this whole thing with the left wing kind of obsession with it and the way that people are either bought into hook, line, and sinker or just put their hands over their ears and just pretended it wasn't happening because they didn't want to have to take a position because it's too scary. Mm-hmm. But one thing that's always got me is that, like, for all of the Stop the War years, for all the time that those wars were going on, the anti-war movement was made up of, a lot of left-wing people, a lot of students, and a lot of Muslims, obviously, a lot of Pakistani immigrants in Glasgow. And so there was like a sort of a weird alliance that formed there, and we all got to know quite a lot of sort of Muslim leaders in the community, and we would get invited to like events at mosques and stuff. And I remember we turned up at one and it was gender segregated, and everyone was like, oh, "This is an outrage," sort of thing. But it's like we weren't about to make a fight about it with them. Like they, invited us in, and like there was a lot of acceptance of, this is why the guys in our group got away with like a lot of racist nonsense. There was one guy that was Egyptian, and it was very trendy at the time. There was a revolution going on, and he got away with the most outrageous misogyny because he was, he was cool and Egyptian, and like we all wanted him around, kind of thing. And that really bugged me. But yeah, basically there was like a lot of tolerance and a lot of acceptance of, people that had maybe different social values than you, but had, the same kind of aim in terms of peace.
I think that
we lost that. That has to come back now. Sorry, I was just thinking. I feel like we must see a resurgence of that now because those two communities are being brought back together. So hopefully, that they're not going to be like, oh, we can't talk to you because you're not on board with the gender stuff. Like, there are more important things going on.
Who knows? I mean, some people are. I just use. I mean, my our X accounts aren't scientific, but what I notice is that sometimes if there's something going on in the gender mentalist stuff, and I'm tweeting and I'm doing that, then I'll get some people, and I'm thinking, okay. And if I'm tweeting more about what's going on with in Israel-Palestine, a lot of times I'll get people and I'll look at their bio and I'll be like, there's pronouns in there and there's like a trans flag. I'm like, well, we'll see if you stay around or not, And I have to say that most people the people who leave and like tell you that they're leaving are the people who are on the gender critical side. I can only take so much, so this is an unfollow. This is just ridiculous, and I'm just like, well, don't let the door hit in the ass, genocide defender. So I go, all right, and because what I have done, I don't go out actively seeking accounts to troll. I don't go out trying to find, Israeli, like the really, really pro-Israeli accounts or maybe the troll farm accounts. Or I don't go out trying to find anybody with a pronoun. I don't do it. I post my stuff, or if someone posts something that or if it comes up on your thing, I don't go out looking for that. I don't go and be like, I'm not going to follow anyone with this, and I'm not going to follow anyone with that, and I'm not going to, please don't follow me if you have, I'm just like, whatever. We can use the mute, we can use the block. But it's just like the turnaround. I mean, it's like there was like this mass exodus, and then there was like this entrance. And so now people are like, I almost feel like I should put something in I have a small account, but like you'll see, I'm critical of gender ideology, and I'm opposed to, war crimes and genocide. So if these two things upset you a lot, then you may not want to, But it's just I don't know. I mean, and the people, and it's really hard. And I can imagine. I don't know if you know who Lear Keith is. Do you know who Lear Keith is? Okay, she was from like what was it, like the Green Resistance, or what was it, Deep Green Resistance or something? But her and I can't remember. I'm sorry, the guy's name I can't remember. But he also did Queer Jeopardy. There's that Queer Jeopardy video. Have you seen this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, they're very much like I think like neo-primitists or something. And anyway, but they were sounding the alarm on transgenderism and gender ideology back like in 2013. And Lear Keith is one of the founders, I think, of Wolf. Yeah. You're familiar with that organization? Women's Liberation Front or something like that. Anyway, in the States. And she has been, really attacked by people who say they're Antifa. And if they say it, I don't know, it's like there's a committee room or like an organization that you can but just really nasty TRA thug type things. But every other way, very anti-war, very, very left, very all this stuff. But she will post stuff, just to use her as an example. And someone will say, there's their Antifa, basically trying to smear all the college campus as being like an Antifa thing. And so she's like, oh, I just don't even have the words for people who would, who would destroy a library or destroy books or something. It was something in Portland State or something. And I'm like, okay. I can appreciate the fact that you're very triggered when Antifa is mentioned. I get that, but first of all, who knows how many people there were actually quote unquote Antifa? And also, who knows how much of that was because of the police crackdown? And also, really, you don't have words to describe how sickening it is when people do this to a library. I'm like, I'm surprised you don't have words for. I go, if the kids in Gaza were being pulled out of rubble with like a book in their hand, would this be more? Somehow associate Antifa and just not a word. And she's like, oh, when is destroying public property ever put an end to war? And I'm thinking that's not the freaking point. The point is you are actively participating in an orchestrated attempt to smear all these students as, Soros paid or Antifa or all this stuff. And you freaking know better. You know better. And yeah, do some of them have pronouns? I'm sure they do. Do some of whatever? Yeah. Would some of them want to deplatform you? Probably. But, there's this issue that's going on right now. But this idea that just nothing, when it's a person like that, and it's just like, I get that you're triggered by Antifa because they've been, the guys who show up at these things and shout down women talking about just, how they're women. Yeah, it's ugly, it's nasty. But the idea that somehow that's this whole student movement and that, oh, well, whatever, it's not like it matters anyway. It's not like this has ever stopped any war. Like, well, what the frick has, yo? And I'm just like, and I don't know what to do with that because she's so amazing in so many ways. And I can empathize that when she hears Antifa, it could be post-traumatic, literally, honestly, post-traumatic stress. But all your logic goes out the window. You can't see that if you're reading this stuff that mentions Antifa, and they only want to talk about the Antifa people who are at this place. Well, first of all, we all know we can't control who goes to these things. And certain press are going to be looking for certain people. She knows that. But the thing is, okay, there's this stuff, but there's what is the gist of these protests, of these encampments? What is it? Can you be on board with that or not? To me, that's the first thing. But just this, I'm like, okay.
I think ignorance is,
Portland State University. Some of the books were damaged, so that's just unspeakable, and she doesn't have the words. Okay. I'm like, all right, I have some words. What the actual flip flop? I mean, what's happening here?
I mean, it's one thing someone having a visceral, emotional reaction to something that blinds them to the context of it and makes it harder for them to sort of see the bigger picture. If they don't know the history, if they're ignorant of it, it's not an excuse at this point, 8 months in, but it's, I can understand that.
Oh, she knows.
But then I think
she knows.
But there are also,
Has to.
There are people within this movement, I think, that are their agents, they're plants. They're here to drag us all to the right and get us all, angry about immigrants and, like Posey Parker, for example, who I spent years defending like an idiot, only for her to turn around and be the worst racist, Zionist, unbelievable, the stuff she comes out with now. And the sad thing is that even when these women are so wrong about something, I would still want them to have a voice, and I would still want to amplify their
I
voice
don't want to
when they're
cancel.
about stuff that I do agree with, you know, whereas they don't want me to have a voice. Rosie Parker would not want to platform me at an event ever. She wouldn't, do you know what I mean? It's like women like us would not get a chance to speak at an event like that. And maybe more women need to start waking up to
Stand
that.
up to the microphone and be like, women are human females, men aren't women don't have penises, transing kids it's wrong, and from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Ah! Boo! Hiss! It's just like, and here's the thing is that, and I, you know, it's easy when you're the outside looking in. So I'm quite sure that I have lots of blind spots, but it's also just amazing to me, and I know you can appreciate this, that it's like, okay, so when the news is telling you about A, B, and C, it's bullshit, it's spin, it's propaganda, you can't trust it. But when they say something about Israel, 100% true. 100% true. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just the most amazing. I mean, it's just like, I thought like, oh my God, if someone's going to revise the manufacturing of consent, there has to be like half the book has to be on this bullshit. Also, a lot of it on gender. But it's this idea that you can see in the wording, you can see in like in the States, it's also bad on the BBC and whatnot, but in the States, it's like all you will have is these students who are saying, oh, you know, I feel unsafe at Columbia because there's this pro-Palestinian rally and, you know, or this pro-Hamas rally, they say, and I'm like, oh, fuck off, yo. It's like, okay, if there were violence, if there was actually, and also I hate feeling so suspicious, but when I see this stuff, like someone posts like a swastika sprayed and painted somewhere, my first thought is like, phew, I wonder who really did that. Yeah. And it could be someone who's just being a dick, who's just trying to cause trouble, but they need that because Zionism feeds off anti-Semitism, both real and contrived. They need that. So I'm like, well, okay. But it's just this thing. It's like and of course the free speech people, I mean, my God, but it's like public speech, political speech isn't about making you feel safe or included. That's not the freaking point. And it's like, do you think when people were marching for civil rights, the people that were against that some of the a lot of the white people, even some of the minorities that thought they were going to get a backlash, think they felt good? They felt safe? Do you think the bankers, when the Occupy Wall Street was first up and running, they felt, lovely when they were being, when this was going on? I mean, please, that's the point. It's just like, I don't understand. I mean, I understand when it comes from the government and from the corporations wanting to, but this hate speech is the most big sister totalitarian bullshit ever. Ever. It's like, who the fuck are you to tell me what I should not like and not and like, or hate and not hate?
I have to say that the Holocaust. Yeah.
Oh, I felt bad. There was a flag. I'm like, please.
Yeah. I think the accusation.
Ovaries. Yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
Well, I was in the situation that a lot of us found ourselves in, like a couple of years back, where I had like close friends, like of a long time, basically calling me a Nazi or refusing to stand up to people who were calling me a Nazi, and that was that really hurt because it was like these people know that like. Well, I'm a history buff. I'm really into history, and I've particularly studied that area. And like, because my parents were socialists and they were civil rights activists, when we moved over to Belgium when I was little, they were really into all the history. And when people would come and visit, we would go on trips, and it would frequently be. I know this is really weird for a kid, but we went to a lot of concentration camps. Like my little mind was quite saturated with that stuff. I read all of the books, all the like Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit, Tell No One Who You Are, The Diary of Anne Frank, I Am David, and then I grew older and there was like Mouse, Art Spiegelman's book and Primo Levi's If This Is a Man and The Truce and stuff. And like, that all went really into my head. And I've also like watched I've all of Showa, all the fucking documentaries you can, I've watched it all.
Mhm.
And like the message that I got from all that is this is how you dehumanize people. This is how you take over the systems of justice and undermine democracy and kill
How
free speech.
a whole
And
society can just like, you know,
yeah, yeah, and
rationalize
it's
it
like
or pretend not to know or to
yeah,
whatever's going on.
exactly. It's the example that everybody holds up because it's on the scale. It is the
Mhm.
worst. I mean, like people have done horrible things and tried to wipe each other out, but because of the mechanization of it, the scale of
Industrial
it,
and
um,
the bureaucracy.
yeah, well, exactly. It's the thing that like you hold up and everybody has done for years as the example of what fascism leads to. What
Mhm.
this ethnocentric, totalitarian, authoritarian stuff that's based, a lot of the time around this idea that there's one perfect type of people and everybody else is inferior. That's
Mhm.
what that leads to, and that's what we need to stop letting that ever happen again.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we've had this Cold War propaganda machine that started that never stopped all throughout the war and kept going straight after the war. I mean, they were locking up communists in concentration camps right after the war. They were rounding them up and putting them in prison, saying we can't let these people, have any kind of influence. So it's not
Recruiting
like
some
you
of
know.
the Nazi scientists and doctors and whatnot.
Well, indeed, a lot of them escaped for reasons. A lot of them just got co-opted, like you say. There's a lot of dodgy stuff went on, but also it was a really important thing that what didn't happen was a resurgence in communism. We couldn't have things getting like evil Russia then became, the big enemy. Everything was terrible in Russia, and this is what I was talking about with the art. The CIA pumping all this money into like projects, different kind of cultural as well as political projects, to basically try to crush the materialist left and any kind of socialist, serious socialist or communist movement. And that's what the Cold War has all been about, right? So everything has come through this lens of that kind of propaganda and the Zionism, where it's like this weird lesson that everybody seems to have learned from all that is the Jews need a state of their own, where Jews are treated better than everyone else. That needs to
Well,
happen in order for justice to be served.
and I think
How is
that
that beautiful?
well,
I
I
mean, I
mean,
understand why you'd want that, being a Jew before. Sorry, just wanted to say I completely get why Jewish people at the end of the war would have wanted that.
oh yeah.
But what I'm saying is that the concept of an ethno state,
Mhm.
the horrible thing that it leads to, the example that you point out of why we don't do those things is
Mhm.
genocide. That's the logical conclusion of a society that runs that way.
And it's been yeah, and what I'll share my experience because I grew up in the well before I was 8, well, from birth to 18 in rural Washington state, so the state above, on the west coast, state above California, state above Oregon. And like I think it was like all white except for maybe one mixed race family, and the mom was white and the dad was Mexican. And there was a lot of agriculture, so there was a lot of agricultural workers. So the only racism that I remember growing up with was towards that group. But in terms of, and I mean, this probably be this open, but again, the stuff that you watch on TV and the history lessons, and also I had an uncle who was Jewish, so that helped. My aunt married a Norman Tynowitz, cool dude, secular. Not that that's fine if he was religious. Anyway, and so I was like, yeah. So this is the thing is, when someone calls me an anti-Semite, it just laughs at me. It's like I know with 100% certainty, 100% certainty that I am not anti-Semite. Or that is, there's other things where there's things that pop up, or there's things that that you can kind of, that you can like this kind of animus I had towards the end of my Egypt trip, but I was able to be like, okay, let's calm down, but and where that would come from and whatnot. But it's if you grow up, and I remember when I was growing up, first it was like all the bad guys were Germans or Russians or Vietnamese, and then all of a sudden they were all Muslim or Arabic or Arabic. Oh, and I'm like, okay. And then again, like the 9/11 and all this stuff. But what I didn't know, and what I've learned since my time in Gaza, when I became because when I first went to Gaza, I was very like, I was, both sides. I was agnostic. I was like, and that I was quickly disabused of that after living there for a little while and seeing what they experienced, and also my own experience going in and out of the country and across the Erez border, and what people would say to me when they found out where I was going or where I'd come from. And just quite the geopolitical education and reading everything I could. And, so I had that going forward. But what I didn't, and what I started to learn, and then, life gets in the way and whatnot. And then when a resurgent would come in, and it's thinking like, okay, why do all the Jewish people in the United States go to Hebrew school? And how much is Hebrew school really Zionist school? And this kind of thing about how Israel's important, and it's a doctrine, and never forget, and this idea about how central what happened in World War II and before that is central to the what became central to the identity, and all this stuff, and not really thinking much, because it's like, because you can empathize. We're like, well, yeah, if I was part of a group of people that happened to, I would also want a place of our own, quote unquote. But the fact that there are other people there, the fact that how it went about, and and Eli Pape and other Israeli historians will basically say that when the Quds Party says from the Jordan to the sea, it's going to be Israel. What they mean is, with as few Palestinians as possible. The goal has always been as much of Palestine as possible, or the Levant possible, because there's also greater Israel, and the borders of that are very dicey. With as few Palestinians, few non-Jewish people as possible. That is the goal. And it's always been the goal. And it's like, and how could it not be? If you want an ethno state, you have to have a Jewish supermajority. And it's just, and it's just, you get the weirdest things. People will be like, well, and when I learned a lot about, when I became more confident to speak about Zionism, when I learned about, political Zionism, and from Herzl and onwards, and also learned that how much of a eugenics project it was. I was reading some of this stuff from, there's a Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, who's been who wrote like this huge book, because he was writing it, I think, for other Jewish people, not for me, because he was being very, like everything's a footnote and everything is, doubles, lots sourced and resourced. And one of the things he goes through is that they weren't trying to create Israel to convert the Jews. They didn't convert the Jews to create Israel. They created Israel to convert the Jews. And there's all this literature about things that the first round of Zionists, even the second round of Zionists, were saying. The most anti-Semitic stuff I've ever heard in my life. It was like this Hebrew Ubermensch project, So the old religious, the cerebral, that Jew is bad. Basically, like saying, like, my understanding is, like, of course it was bad what happened to them, but we have to change. We have to change the Jewish people. So you get this idea from, you got a holy land to a homeland. You have a religion to a nationalist project. You have this, you have they use Hebrew, which my understanding is used to be just for reading religious texts, and then they had like broadened it, because it was going to be, because if you have a country, you have a nation state, you have to have a language, you have a flag, you have all this stuff, the military, the kibbutz, all these things that were not, quote unquote, I don't want to say indigenous, but like original to what I've learned about Judaism. And you're just reading what these people are saying, you're like, my God, this is the most anti-Semitic stuff I've like. If you would like put up a quote and say, okay, who said this? You would think, okay, well, like a raving anti-Semite or Nazi said that. Oh no, it's this the founder of, it's Ben Gurion said that, or Herzl said that, or Jacob Binsi said that, or I'm just like, whoa. Which is why, if you see it now, it makes sense how they have to go after Jewish people who don't toe the line. It's just like, and the best way I can think of, like, it is kind of like this kind of pseudo fanatic, like, protection racket, something going on there, like, it's just yeah. So it's really hard, because when you have to give yourself the permission to speak freely about this, even knowing that a lot of people are going to hear it, and it's because they have that reaction. Because if you've been I don't want to say necessarily indoctrinated, but sensitized to the history that we've been given about the Jewish people, it's really hard to entertain that, to square that with what you can keep on learning about the Zionist project and that ideology and that practice. It's really difficult. But we have to do it because people are being massacred. And this could spread to the whole region. You know, so you gotta say, like, look, you know, this is a really problematic project you have going on here. And the United States, I don't know if they just want an imperial outpost, or they just want to, you know, sell weapons. I don't know what's going on, but it's just madness.
Yeah, crazy. It doesn't even seem like it's in their interest anymore. But anyway,
Sorry,
yeah.
what? The U.S. or
in terms of the U.S.'s continued support, like, is it even in their interest at this point? But then again, the escalation that we all thought might happen didn't happen. All the Arab nations basically have allowed this to happen. So it doesn't matter
I don't
anymore.
know if you're following how much it's covered in the how much that you're able to look at it, but what's going on with like the Congress is like, it's almost like they're all Israeli now. I mean, it's like they're totally selling this moral panic that anti-Semitism is everywhere. It's on the rise. It's, you know, it's not even just in the colleges anymore. Now it's in the high schools, in the secondary schools. I mean, it's just like, you know, and I'm like, I almost think it's like the boy who cried wolf. It's like, you know, there actually are anti-Semites. You may not want to use this word so much, where you hear it like, okay, yeah, whatever. It's just something you don't like. And this whole thing about, you know, these Congress people saying, oh, well, any school that allows this pro-Hamas stuff to go on should be denied student funding. These people shouldn't get any jobs. Like, their lives should be ruined. It's like McCarthyism it's McCarthyism with social media, I think, with the media capacity. I mean, it's the only way. It's not like we want you to stop. We want to ruin your entire life. And you have some of these students, and that's why I can understand why people want to dunk on students, and why, because, you know, but I'm like, they're out there, they're taking this shit. They have these billionaires saying they're going to make sure they're unhireable. And they're saying, I don't care. This is more important.
Did you see the thing?
I'm sorry, I'm not going to say, well, fuck that, because they you know, they'll probably say that, you know, trans rights are human rights. Okay, yeah, that's bullshit, but you know, and it's just this crazy moral panic and everything. It's not just anti-Semite, it's anti-Semitism, and it's Hamas. They're all like, all the universities are just pro-Hamas. You know, and there was one guy, I don't know, it was Tom Cotton. He's like the real fascist, because there's like Trump, who will say some fascist stuff. You have the Democrats that do fascist stuff, but they do it with like a liberal discourse. And then you have the serious ones who aren't dipshits, who know how the government works, like this Tom Cotton Yahoo. And he's basically saying, like, all these students should get rounded up and we should send them to Gaza. He said that and put it publicly. He's a senator. He's a U.S. senator.
Yeah, send them to Gaza for 6 months as protest punishment.
And I'm like, do you really want those two groups to get together? You know, pretty soon. I mean, I'm waiting for it. I think they're going to push this so far. And I was teasing with my friend earlier, but I think it might actually happen that in a couple of years, instead of saying the Che Guevara T-shirt, you're going to see the Hamas T-shirt. You're going to have that guy on there with the thing.
Yeah.
You know, because they're just like, look, all we're saying is, you know, we don't want to be part of this. We don't want to support this. And it's just bringing in the cops, and, you know, and it's just a lot of times, and they love it when it's a mayor of color or a police chief that's black. They love that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and my God, I don't know. This might be the case in London as well, because I know that Israel trains a lot of police officers. But the New York Police Department has an office in Tel Aviv. Seriously, and others, when there's this relationship between Israel Defense Forces and the police in the States is crazy. And
Yeah, that's
nobody talks
dodgy.
about it. It doesn't get talked about in any publication, like, I mean, it does, because, or how would I know about it? I'm not on the street investigating in New York City, but um, there's a story that came out, I think, on, oh God, what was it? I don't think it was Electronic Intifada. I think it might have been, was that one with Max Blumenthal, Gray Zone. And there's this professor who's a professor at Columbia. I think it was Columbia, or maybe it was Yale. And she's also like this liaison with like the NYPD. So basically like NYPD intelligence. And it's like this whole like incestuous thing. So you have Columbia, you have the NYPD, and you have the IDF. What the frick? And these people think that Russia is taking over the country. Like, oh, I mean,
that's the thing.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, just that Israel, it's like it's not so much a country at this point as it is like a network of operatives. You know what I mean?
I don't know what else to call it. And people get mad, like, I don't know what to tell you. And yeah, there are people there who are born there, and we're all whatever. I don't want anybody to be destroyed. I mean, I want the ideology of Zionism to be gone, but I don't want actual people to be destroyed.
That's a danger. This idea that if they had a, post-apartheid, more equal single-state solution where everybody could live equally somehow, the idea that trying to achieve that would automatically mean that all these poor Israelis would get massacred. Where are they getting this from? Because every Arab nation practically has turned their backs on them. It's not going to happen. They've got all this military might. They've got all this support. Like,
for me, I'm like, that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. Like, yeah, I would also be nervous if I had treated these people like you have for all these generations. It's like, yeah, it's going to be difficult. And
they thought the same.
And I'm sorry, and anybody online, I'm sorry, but a lot of them could go back to Brooklyn. They could go back to Odessa. They could go back to all these places if they wanted to. I'm not, but again, it's not up to me. I'm not for huge purges, of course. But it's like, well, bummer. You got to work it out. You got to have truth and reconciliation. You got to, other places that were quite divided have been able to figure it out somehow. Is it going to be easy? No. Are there going to be bad actors? Yes. Are there going to be people trying to sabotage it? Yes. But it's like, this thing is going to end now, one way or another. And I think it's so laughable when people are like, oh, well, Hamas should surrender. They should, give. I go, do you really think they did all this? The Palestinians have gone through all this just to go back to how it was on October 6th? Oh, no. This is going one way or the other. It would be an affront to everyone who has been killed to be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we'll get 100 hostages back, and we'll give your hostages back, and we'll just, have a committee, and we'll just, it's like, they're not doing that. And why would they? Strategically, Hamas has handed Israel its lunch. Strategically. I'm not talking about like a death toll, but strategically, it's like what's going. And again, I'm not a military analyst, but I'll say that the people who I listen to, who seem to be like they're totally into that, but they seem to be objective, are saying like, look, what do we know? We know that the idea that Israel was impenetrable, it's not true. So even if you think that somehow, and it could be, who knows, God, who knows, that a certain group in Israel let that happen on October 7th, so they could use it as a pretext to go whole hog and clear out Gaza, and even parts of the West Bank, of course, because there's that going on. But whatever. What it showed everybody in that region, the world, is that this group of people did that on October 7th. They conducted a military raid. And yeah, were people killed? Yes, people were killed, but people were killed in all military raids. So again, if you want to use a measure, let's use the same measure. I'm fine to judge things, but let's use the same measure for the parties involved. And it's like, and then you have Israel was already pushed out of Hezbollah, not Hezbollah, but Hezbollah pushed them out a while back. I don't know, it was in 2013 or something. And they've only gotten stronger and more organized and more equipped. And then you have Iran that showed that, look, your Iron Dome, we have these, I don't know what they call them, like the, whatever, super duper missile, hypersonic, that with some old drones, we targeted 7 of our missiles at your base, and 5 of them hit their target. So your thing here, no.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Now, what we're all lucky, and probably just thinking of our own well-being, is that Iran and Hezbollah have not taken the bait. Now, strategically, that makes sense. For the bodies piling up in Gaza, not so much. But strategically, the idea that if everybody gets involved, then the eyes go off Gaza, and it becomes this larger thing. You know? And so if we're just looking at the death toll, we're like, Jesus, this is just a slaughter, and it is. But if you look at strategically, militarily, what's been shown to Israel and to everybody in the region, to US, it's like, you are not impenetrable. If we wanted to, we could make Tel Aviv a very nasty place. And northern Israel, good luck. And do you think that the Israelis who are used this kind of carte blanche entitlement how are they going to handle that when Hezbollah fighters start coming over? And if the people in Jordan, most of which, and there's so many Palestinians in Jordan, even though the government, the monarchy is just like, a puppet. But what if, you're in serious trouble then. So, and it's like, they know it. Hamas knows it. Hezbollah knows it. Iran knows it. China knows it. Russia knows it. America knows it. I don't know if they're politicians. I don't know if some of these Yahoo Congress people know it. But the situation has changed. Doesn't mean that it's not, dreadful, the human cost of it. But it's like, sorry, why would they surrender? Why would they go back to what was going on October 7th? Why would you do that after 50,000 people are killed? Why would you do it?
Yeah. I think your analysis is totally sound, and I think this is one way or another the beginning of the end of the Zionist project. But like this whole idea,
who knows? But
well, of course, there's no predicting these things. But this idea that the Jewish people or that the Israeli people would be so in danger of being wiped out by all their neighbors, I think is kind of absurd given that looking at what's happened. But like people said the same thing about freeing the slaves in America, although they'll all rise up and kill us.
Yeah. Well, domino theory, yeah. Domino theory.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the same thing about.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The same thing about South Africa. So I actually had a Terf come on that thread the other day, and because I'd called Israel an apartheid state, said that basically, well, look, South Africa's not in the best condition now, so maybe they would have been better under apartheid, I'm like, I can't even with these people.
Well, it's also this weird calculus. It's like, well, maybe the people like saying, well, some of the slaves had it really good. Some of the people that came over from Africa, they probably had, they got 2 meals a day, they weren't having,
well,
we don't know what was going on in Africa. Those people were better
for them.
It's some weird capitalist calculus going on there. And at a certain point, it's like, but that boils down to is that it's this old trope that some people can't govern themselves.
Yeah,
they're not ready for it. There has to be a stewardship, and whatever. I have 3 kids, so one of them is not self-governing, but 2 of them are. Should I deny them the whole right? Like, you're never going to have any rights because you're a crazy person? No. It's like, so fucking what? That's freedom. Or self-determination is to make mistakes, to decide these things on your own, not from people who came around and said, oh, look at this nice, this diamond mine. I mean, whatever. It's amazing, Laura, isn't it? Any excuse, like, do you actually hear yourself? I mean, are we going back to like white man's burden now? Is this like Heart of Darkness? I mean, what the hell? It's like, it's the same when they bring up the gay rights thing. It's like, look, I would love for people who are gay, we'll just say Palestine, because that's what we're talking about, to have not have to worry about not having to be in the closet and worrying not just about being shunned, but maybe even more bodily you know, again, I don't want to get into the propaganda because I really don't know what actually happens there. I know that technically it's, you know, haram and it's a sin, but I mean, I'm not saying like I think that, but you know, because it's, you know, what's secular and what's not is very murky. And also there's a class component to that and a regional component, but that's a story for another time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like,
I will.
so what
I'll have
it's
to
like,
go
you
and
know,
get.
sorry,
Sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll have to go and get some food shortly because the shop's going to close, and
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm breaking the strike by buying food, because I forgot to do it last night before the shop closed. What was
Okay,
I
I'll
going to
stop
say?
then, and
Sorry.
I'll leave. I'll let you have the last couple of words. Anything about so we
Oh
again?
no,
Sorry, hello people.
no, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I think a lot of them need to stop calling themselves Terf. I mean, I know that we didn't give ourselves this label. This was applied to us, but it was something that I was kind of happy to reclaim and be like, all right, fair enough, I'm a Terf. But they're not radical feminists. Like,
No.
radical feminism, for me, comes with a sense of colonialism and war being things that are major tools of oppression of women. And if
Yeah,
you
it's a
don't
nice.
get that, then
Yeah.
you're not radical. Like,
No, it's
but yeah,
bourgeois in. It's basically like this kind of say, you know, if you agree with us that your culture's bad, and we'll work with you to you know, to extricate yourself from that, then okay. If not, then I don't know, it's your fault.
yeah.
I mean, it's amazing what's scary to me. I don't know, scary is the wrong word, because when people feel free just to say in public, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well that norm's gone too, you know. It's just one thing what people
Yeah.
will say, like in, you know, between like various, on the sly, or when you're, whatever. But what you'll say in public, at work, on the news, or online, especially if you're not anonymous, and it's just like, oh, this is totally fine. Okay, I guess it's okay to be a racist,
Yeah.
hyper imperialist piece of shit, as long as it's towards this group of people who have been ignored, marginalized, silenced, erased, and oppressed and brutalized for 70 years. One group or another have tried every single thing they could do. Nothing mattered. And this other group, their armed resistance groups, I'm not going to say terrorists. Have they engaged in terrorist acts? Yeah, but who hasn't? What state hasn't? What armed group hasn't? Colonialism is a nasty business. Resistance to colonialism and imperialism a nasty business. Invasion's a nasty business. Fighting invasion's a nasty business. So whatever. But it's like these people who are like, I'm sorry, wham. They like my whole thing is I was Star Wars, like the Occupied Strikes Back. I'm sorry. I'm not happy about it, but who sets the terms of engagement? It's not Hamas that sets the terms of engagement. And it's been quite clear the only language that's going to get any attention, and that's been borne out empirically, is violence. I'm not happy about it, but here we are. And I'll just say one thing. Of course, I was in Gaza back in 2002, 2004, and a lot of my students, most of my students were with Fatah, but the school I went to was I saw it was a private school. And the way because there's a few really wealthy families in Gaza, but most people are refugees, and they wanted to have a nice school for their kids to go to, but of course it wouldn't have gone over socially. So there was like 25 or 30% of students were from like the richer families, and then all the other students were scholarship students from the refugee camps. And it was like, so a lot of them, the Hamas was more popular in the poorer areas, in the refugee camp areas, and Fatah was more popular in the other areas. So I would go, because you stand out, you're an American, I'm white, you got blue eyes, whatever, which was the currency there, which is fine. That's the story for another time, not just there, but other places. So you get invited, of course, and if you go to one student's house, you have to go to all the students' house. So I was constantly being invited, and that's great. So some of the buns, they were Hamas households. It's not like they were like little militant units, but that was their political affiliation. And so I would have conversations with people, Especially that, and it would be, if it was in a more conservative household, I would be there. I'd be there with the men and the boys and the men, and the women would kind of come and give the food, and they would kind of, and I'm like an honorary man, I don't know. And we'd have some really intense conversations because, of course, the US government is no friend of theirs, but they never, ever personalize it towards me. And I had some really interesting eye-opening conversations into that. And it was the same thing with the Fatah group. It was that the idea. And so it's the idea that even though everybody knows that without America, Israel couldn't do what it was doing, I was never targeted and held personally responsible. And also people who are Jewish have gone there, who've taken it upon themselves to want to look, whether it be journalists or documentaries or like, I don't know, like they're going to have joint orchestras. And this idea that somehow anyone who's a Jew or is Western is an immediate threat is bullshit. Am I saying that nothing ever bad happens? No, I am not. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this idea that there's not it's actually amazing how it's not surprising the hate or it's surprising that there's not more hatred there. There's not more quote unquote anti-Semitism there, rather than targeting on the Zion, and people will make a point, the people who are trying to see past this catastrophe, that at some point we're going to have to live together, really try to inculcate in the minds that separation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And do the average Israelis do that? Fuck no. Because they don't have to. They don't have to. Most of them, at my experience. So it's just like, we'll see. This idea, well, we can't do that because then there might be some bloodshed. Well, there's bloodshed now. A lot of it. It's not going to be easy business to get on the other side of this, but it's coming.
Yeah.
Anyway,
if it was
I love you. You're my new favorite Terf.
Sarah, thank you so much for doing this, and I hope we get a chance to do it again.
I hope so.
2002 that you were in Gaza. I might send you a wee DM because I wonder if you know a friend of mine.
Okay. It was 2002 to 2004. Some people I've stayed in contact with. A lot of people have died or been killed, of course, fled. But there's still some people who are outside who were students of mine who I'm in contact with. They use Facebook more than Twitter. I don't know why. Maybe not anymore because that's a crazy situation. Meta is basically deep state.
One man you saying it's a Scottish fella. He was quite young at the time. Nick Jury. Okay. He was there with a woman called Alice and Rachel Corrie and Tom Humble.
Oh, Rachel Corrie. That happened right before I got there, I think.
Okay. So he would have been there just before.
But it was really, I don't know if it happened right before. I remember that, but that was right when because I was there from 2002 to 2004 during the second Intifada, and the Rachel Corrie thing happened in that period. And also the suicide bombing and Apache helicopters coming into Israel all the time doing targeted assaults. They used to know how to target Hamas people, by the way. They used to do that all the time. Yeah. Forgotten, but whatever. That's another story. But Laura, thank you. We'll do this again. So this has been Terf Against Genocide, which is basically the idea that we're two women who are for who believe, or not believe, but don't pretend that women are anything other than adult human females, which doesn't mean that you can't, dress and say you are, call yourself what you want. But of course, stay out of the spaces and the sports and the language and all that craziness. AGPs aren't women. And also the idea that genocide, just as a rule, is wrong, and that just because there are women and children and people who are have a different faith or a different cultural norm set than we do, does not make them any less worthy of our sympathy and our support. And I don't want to sound like I'm just going to quote Cornel West, even though I have some issue. He was a fan. He should have stayed a public intellectual, not run for president. That's another issue. But that a Palestinian baby is as equal, as important as a Jewish baby, as an American baby, as a Yemenese baby. I think that's important as anybody else. And just because somebody doesn't think that trans women are women, or that doesn't have gay pride parades, doesn't mean that we can turn our eyes away and let them be massacred at will with the complicity of our government and our media and a lot of our intellectual people who we counted on. So Laura Jones, you're my sister. Solidarity. If anyone calls her a Nazi, you'll come deal with me, and let me tell you, I'm a bad bitch. I'm immune. It's like once you're free,
thank you so much,
free, baby. Anyway, Laura, anything else you want to say? Yes, so we'll do this again. Terfs Against Genocide. Us who know that TRAs and ZRAs and the trans rights activists and Zionist rights activists, very little daylight. Who knew? Okay, peace, end the genocide, one state solution, one person, one vote, figure it out, no purges. Bye, Laura. See you next time.
Brilliant. See you soon, Tara. Thank you.
Thank you.